Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 214 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that would usually drop every Sunday. However, I couldn't do the video yesterday as I was spending time with my family on Easter Sunday, so I've decided to put the video out today so that we don't miss an episode. If you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new, and of course, as always, if you want to be featured on next week's video, then please leave your question in the comment section of this video. And with all that being said, let's get straight on to the first question. Sheldon237 says, hey Bossk, been a follower for a few months and really love your comprehensive coverage of the line. It's been a great guide for purchasing decisions as well as just general knowledge about the history of the figures and the line. Thank you, Sheldon. He says, question for next week, one of the biggest factors for me when purchasing TVC or Black Series figures is the display options. Finding the right shelves can be tricky, and I was wondering what you use to display your figures, both opened and unopened. Thanks and keep up the fantastic work. So in terms of my loose collection, I have those in kind of like sort of mini displays, and I use various cabinets from IKEA. I will try and list some of the names down below, but I have got 2 or 3 different ones that I use, and sorry, I just cannot remember the names of them. However, the shelves, I can remember the names. They're called Momaw. I will leave a link to those in the description below. And whilst checking out, looking at those, I found some really interesting things that people have been using them for Star Wars collecting. Now, for me, they are absolutely perfect for carded figures, whether you display them in star cases or in acrylic cases. They kind of have that little lip at the front which stops them falling forward or stops them falling out, which is quite a good safety measure, and I just think they look cool on the wall anyway. But whilst looking, as I said, I did find some interesting things. I saw this picture here, what somebody's used for Lego minifigures. And what they've done is they've slid one of those Lego bases or some Lego bricks onto the shelf, so then they can build up their Lego minifigure display, which I thought was a really awesome way to display things on the shelves like that. I can imagine if you've got loads and loads of minifigures or ships or whatever, then I can imagine it would look pretty cool. But I personally use them for my carded figures that I have in acrylic cases, and it does the job just fine. Pesto Pizza 2001 says, hi Bib B, just noticed one of my TVC Rogue One Stormtroopers has developed a yellow chest and has been stored away in a Tupperware box away from sunlight. Do you think Hasbro is aware of these issues with white figures and are developing ways to counter these issues, or maybe they're not concerned? I know this happens to 40-year-old Kenner figures, but this with TVC is a bit too soon. Yeah, I think it's been a problem all the way through the line. You can look at some of the Saga Collection clones and things like that, and the body often goes yellow. It's made of a different plastic to the arms and the legs. And I've got one of my Rogue One Stormtroopers here, and you might not be able to see in this light, but he is definitely going ever so slightly yellow. I mean, nowhere near compared to what some of the clones have back in the day, but you know, it is an issue. I think it's just an issue with the different types of plastic. I'm hoping that they have got over that with the new clones that have come out. Like when I'm looking at my VC45s, for example, that I've had for a very long time, those seem to be okay. And it's actually the helmet, like the rubbery helmet, that ended up going yellow on those. So hopefully they've sorted the body out, and hopefully we won't have that problem for too much longer. But yeah, certainly the Rogue One Stormtrooper has a problem. I've not seen the same problem just yet with the updated Stormtrooper on that A New Hope card. So fingers crossed it won't happen. Marco Martinez says, Boss Bounty, Marco from the Bronx, New York City, USA, with a question. When will we see all the pipeline action figures from last year, like Cal Kestis in Imperial uniform and the Mandalorian Judge? I'm pretty sure both of those figures are set to be released in a wave this year, maybe the second to last one of the year or the final wave of the year, but they are definitely this year. There's only a couple of pipelines that have been listed at the moment which are for next year. One of those was definitely that pilot that's coming with the E-Wing. I'm 99.9% sure that that is a 2025 figure, but most of the other pipelines that we have that are pipelined already will be this year. I think there's one other which I can't remember which one it was that is going to be next year, but as I say, the majority of all the pipelines that are still outstanding are going to be this year. 1980 Star Wars guy says, here's a question. What is the figure you have the most multiples of? Keep at it with the great videos. Okay, so probably the figure that I have the most of is probably the Imperial Stormtrooper. I've got loads of those. Always made sure I had loads of those because you need them for the majority of your displays. If we're talking about a character that I have the most of from over the years, it's probably Darth Vader. Tim Matsos says, hello there. Question for next week. Let's play the pretend game. If we were to get a cantina for a HasLab, what figures would you like packed in, and what figures or accessories would you want for tier goals? pretending games are so much fun. They really are, aren't they? So this comes off the back of them announcing that we are going to be getting a TVC HasLab. The next HasLab is the Vintage Collection. It's going to be announced on May the 4th, I believe, which is great for all of us, of course. Now, there have been some rumours around that it is going to be a Mos Eisley Cantina. There's been a few people in the community dropping some hints on that fact as well. So hopefully that comes true and we will be getting a HasLab Cantina. And if, pretending that we are getting one, what would I like included? I think packed in, you would have to have the barman. Wooher would have to be packed in. At the end of the day, he's the ever-present, isn't he? He's the barman. Everybody else that's in the cantina is just a visitor of the cantina, or it might be their local. They might be in there every day, but a lot of people might just be passing through that Mos Eisley Cantina. But the ever-present is Wooher, and I think if you're going to be doing a playset or a HasLab Cantina, then I think Wooher is the obvious choice to be packed in. Next after that, about tier goal, stretch goals, whatever you want to call them. The Tonica Sisters do spring to mind. Part of me doesn't want the Tonica Sisters locked behind an expensive playset, but if you're going to be putting them in any type of playset, then obviously it would have to be the Cantina, and they would seem a natural choice as well. If we don't get them, then, would we ever really get them? The Tonica Sisters? I think not. So if this is going to be a HasLab Cantina, then this is the time to do them, isn't it, right? Then I've got some of the other figures here that frequent the cantina. These are some of more of the expensive ones in sort of previous lines. They're really expensive on the secondary market. There's a 2 or 3 there like Herchak Kalfas and Lisop Serlin, for example, that are, they would definitely be a decent choice for a repack on a vintage card, perhaps maybe as a stretch goal or something. I don't know. It all depends on how they do it, doesn't it? And what's included in the first place. I don't really like suggesting things that are too good for stretch goals because we want most of it in the base offering. The stretch goals should be like, if you get here, then you can have this little extra thing, which is pretty cool. It shouldn't be something that's a necessity for the set. Another question about the HasLab here, and it's from C3PO Concepts, and he says, "What's up, sir? Great work. If the next HasLab is indeed a Cantina set, what do you imagine the price point will be?" Now, this is something that it would be a complete guess on my part here, because it really depends on what the offering is and how big it's going to be and what's included. But I would say a Cantina playset, I wouldn't want it to be any more than, say, $300, $350. I certainly don't really want it to be anywhere near $500 because I don't think a Mos Eisley Cantina has got all that much to it, right? It's got the bar, some alcoves, bit where the band perform. Those are the things that you want in there, aren't they? So I would say I wouldn't really want to be paying more than $300, $350 for it. So we'll have to wait and see, and how big it is, We'll just have to wait and see what they do with it. Biker Scout 74 says, "Hey, Bossk. I haven't asked a question for ages. I know you collect both loose and carded figures, but do you keep and collect loose card backs? And if you do, how do you store and display them? I only generally collect loose figures, but always keep the loose card backs too. Enjoying your Sunday roundups as always." So yeah, there was a time where every loose figure that I opened, I would open it really, really carefully and keep the card back. But then I figured to myself, why have I kept this card back when I've also got a carded version of the figure? Because as you say, I collect both. So one day I was sort of sorting out my collection. I think it's when I moved collection rooms, and I came across this box just full of things like this. Obviously I've opened this one really badly, but things like that basically. And I just thought to myself, why on earth am I keeping these? I really don't need these. So I threw them all away. And now when I open a figure, I just tear it open. I don't really care for the condition of the card back now because I'm throwing it away, recycling it or whatever. But yeah, I used to, but not anymore. Marcus8718 says, "Hi BB, thank you very much for the time you spend on these videos. Sure you must love it as we all do. My question for next week, do you think there will ever be retro ships in the retro line like an X-Wing or a speeder bike? This could bring us back an A-Wing or an Imperial shuttle. Greetings from Germany, Marcus." Yeah, I think I've covered this before, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did that. But one thing does worry me a little bit about it, and that's the price. Because, and this is what I've said about it before, at the end of the day, if they brought out the Millennium Falcon now, the vintage Kenner Millennium Falcon, how much do you think they would want for that? I think they'd probably want over $150, £150 for it personally. And you can get one. You can get a decent condition one out of its box. You could probably get a vintage Kenner X-Wing or a speeder bike or a snow speeder for cheaper right now than you could if Hasbro were to do them in the retro collection. That's just my feelings on it anyway. But yeah, you know, there might be some people out there that want the, you know, brand new mint box, exactly like it was done back in the day, but they'll probably ruin it by putting the big red retro sticker on there. So they're not for me. Justin Riley says, great question and answer session once again. Wolf Yularin and from A New Hope and a new Tarkin figure would be great in TVC. Question for the week. With the Pipeline Mandalorian and Blurg pack, what do you think are the chances of the Blurg being released on its own? I mean, multiples are needed for the scenes where Cara Dune, Grief Karga and Quill are all together, right? You are right. You are absolutely right. Do I think that they'll do that? Not in the near future. I mean, I'm never say never. They may release the Blurg on its own in the future. You know, use the sculpt again or whatever. But for now, you know, they're putting that Mandalorian in there because they need to pay for the Blurg, basically. That's what they're doing. So you have to pay more for it because it's got the figure in there that's, you know, they've already got the tooling for, basically. So that's what it's for. It's in there to cost it out. Of course, the Mandalorian does ride the Blurg, and hopefully they will update that original Mandalorian in his brown sort of rusty armor with that new pauldron that he gets, because I think he does have that at the time that he rides the Blurgs. So that's what I think about it, basically. You know, you never know in the future, but right now that'll be the only way that you get the Blurg. Michael Aguilera says, hey Bossk, do you think Hasbro will ever make a TVC line similar to the 2007 30th anniversary Ralph McQuarrie concept art figures? These figures were a huge part of my childhood and I would love to see them with all new updated sculpts and articulation. Also, the concept art would make for some pretty awesome card backs. Thanks and keep up the amazing work. You are absolutely right about that. They would make awesome card backs. They really would. I can picture them right now with that McQuarrie art. They would be superb. However, I'm not too sure Hasbro are going to spend the new tooling budget on updated sculpts and articulation, as you mentioned there, for those types of figures. I think very similar to when we got the Clone Wars figures. They were just a way of creating those sort of 2D card back line, sub-line that they did. I think there were 6 of them, wasn't there? Nothing was new in those, and that's my fear for this sort of thing. I think they have enough problems getting out the main characters, background characters, you know, original 96 characters as it is, without throwing in sort of McQuarrie characters that's going to take up the budget, basically. But if there was parts that they could use from other figures that they could make those up, then there's no reason why they couldn't do it. But I think they're quite unique, aren't they? And I'm not too sure if they'd be able to do that, but you're absolutely right. The card backs would look incredible altogether. David Gherkin says, thanks for all the contributions to the community. Boss, question for next week. What are your thoughts on the pipelined Imperial light cruiser hallway? I wish they would have done the bridge of the cruiser and pack in Imperial officer Elia Kane. Yeah, I think what this is going to be, it's going to be very, very similar to the Tanty 4 hallway playset, and it'll enable you to use it for multiple different scenes, basically. I think just the bridge centers on that one specific scene, but with the hallway you're probably going to be able to use it for, you know, a generic Imperial hallway for Stormtroopers and TIE Fighter pilots and Vader and things like that, but also you're going to be able to use it for all those Dark Troopers, the Luke Skywalker, your Moff Gideon, all those kinds of things. So I think it'll have like a dual purpose. There is going to be a figure included, I believe. Didn't they say it's going to be a generic Mandalorian? I think that's what they said, a privateer or something like that. What I do hope is that they also include a mouse droid. That's a great way of getting him out on that mini card to match the Salacious Crumb. You know, you could put him on a Mandalorian version of it rather than the Revenge of the Jedi version. I think that'd be pretty cool if they added that in there, but we'll have to wait and see if they do that. But that's my thoughts on it, really. I think if they just did the bridge, although it's a pretty cool scene with a decent battle and everything, I think it would restrict you in what you could use it for. Dane Godwin says, hi Tim, question for next week. With the deluxe boxes seeming to get clearanced more often than not, what do you think of Hasbro releasing deluxe on cards like the Maldo Kreese Mandalorian? I know people thought that one stuck out when slotted into the carded run, but if they did the deluxe as a separate numbered run, that would alleviate that concern. Thoughts? Yeah, I'm one of those people that wasn't a massive fan of that oversized card back. It was a bit jarring compared to all of the others. I much preferred it with what they did with this Sith Trooper here, where they just gave it an oversized bubble. I just think that looks a bit better. And I really do hope that in the future we move away from these boxes. We've just had Zeb revealed. He's going to be in one of those boxes, and I would have much preferred it if he was on a card back. At the end of the day, they're putting him on a card back with a bunch of accessories with the one that's included in the Ghosts. So why couldn't they have put him on a card back in the main line. I think the reason for that is because if they did that and then they were still charging more, people will say, why are you charging more for a figure on a bubble? So they put it into that box and call it Deluxe, and they get away with it that way. Even though we'd probably all accept that Zeb is a huge figure, just like Chrysanthemum. We're all used to paying Deluxe prices for those oversized figures now, but we would prefer them on a card back like this. That's my opinion on it anyway. PathDoc22 says, hi Tim, with the release of Hammerhead for the Black Series at WonderCon today, do you think Hammerhead will be on a vintage card sooner rather than later? My condolences on Krell. Yeah, so everybody, Pong Krell won March Madness, and I was actually quite happy about it when the final was announced anyway, because I really didn't want Balin winning. He was the #1 seed. You know, I like the underdog story. I want something a bit different to win, and hopefully, you know, this will prove whether or not Hasbro actually listen to the fans, because I think we'll get Balin anyway. Will we get Pong Krell now? He's won that. Let's wait and see what they do. I'm not too sure if they'll make that figure, but we'll have to wait and see. In terms of your question, will they release Hammerhead in the Vintage Collection? I think it's going to be highly more likely now that the Black Series are going to be getting him. That figure screams Vintage Collection for me. I'm not too sure how well it'll do in the Black Series. I believe it's a Deluxe as well. And if all of the rumours are true about the HasLab Cantina, then Hammerhead would be the ultimate choice for a new alien. He's an original 96er. And that's what worries me a little bit about it. He's a Deluxe in the Black Series. I wouldn't want them to do a Deluxe in the Vintage Collection in one of those boxes. They have got to change that idea if they ever do Hammerhead. He's got to be on a card. He's got to be on the original 96 card. Even if you're charging a little bit more for him, calling him Deluxe, whatever you do, you've still got to get him on that card, Hasbro. Please do not release Hammerhead in one of those boxes. Mouse Crumb says, great Sunday Q&A, boss. Question for next week. How are you feeling about the first half of the year's figures? 2002 had first 3 waves 17 figures, 8 new. 2023 had first 3 waves 16 figures, 7 new. 2024 first 3 waves 16 figures and only 3 new. Dooku, Leia and Hu Yang. Where are all the new figures at? So first of all, we do have the pipelines of the Acolyte. Those are new figures, so you have to count those. Maybe you asked this question before those were revealed. I'm pretty sure we're going to get at least one more Acolyte figure before the year's out. And then of course you had the other show, the Skeleton Crew, which actually got put back. That was supposed to air before the Acolyte, so Hasbro have obviously had to do some moving around there. So maybe we'll get some Skeleton Crew at the end of the year when that show finally airs on Disney+. So there's a few there. Also, I do believe that those new Rebels figures that have been revealed, they are counted as new sculpts as well. The ones that we're getting in the Ghost are the ones that they're making from those molds, or using the tooling from those. So the budget has actually come out of the main line, and then the figures, just like all the other HasLabs, the figures in the Ghost are reuses of those figures with different accessories, retools and that kind of thing. So I think you'll find by the time the year is out, we'll end up having around 12 or 13 new sculpts, which is pretty similar to last year. Molcule5354 says, great video BB, question for next week. You had a question about TVC playsets. You mentioned a few, but said a Death Star playset would have to be a HasLab because it would be too large. What do you think about maybe doing smaller scene playsets, i.e. officers' conference room, detention hallway, trash compactor, etc., but then have them being able to connect to each other side by side or stack one on top of another, much like the old Kenner Micro playsets that came out for the Empire Strikes Back Hoth sets and Bespin sets. Keep up the great work. So yeah, absolutely, I would be up for that. The only thing that would worry me a little bit about that is how long it would actually take for them to complete the Death Star, and whether they would complete it fully in the end. Things always get in the way of, plans and things like that. And if you look at the Jabba's Palace playset, the same things happen with that. We've got that really nice new one, but the original adventure set that came out 4 years ago, although it kind of goes with it, it's the wrong scale, it's the wrong colour, it doesn't really fit personally. I mean, it looks okay on the shelf and everything, but there's an example of 2 playsets that have come out which are from the same scene, but they don't really go together properly. So as much as I'd like them to split the Death Star up and be modular and add to each other and stack and all that kind of thing, how long are we going to be prepared to wait for them to finish it? Would it be 5, 6, 7 years? How often would they bring a piece of it out? And then ultimately, would the first piece brought out this year fit with the 7th piece brought out in 6 years' time, for example? That would be my only worry. Apart from that, I'd be all for it. Penguin Master 2371 says, hi boss, fantastic content. Question for next week. With the multi-pilot packs that have come before, do you think a twin pack would be a good idea? One pilot with their astromech. This would cover the X and Y wings. I love the droids and astromechs. Your views? I think it's a great idea. I would love to see that happen. You get 2 card backs in one. They could even reduce the price a little bit, Hasbro, if you're going to be repainting astromechs and repainting pilots and just creating new heads or whatever you decide to do on that, Hasbro. That would be a cool twin set. You could do a whole sort of run of them, so you get all of the pilots from the Battle of Yavin. I think that's a great idea, a great way of being able to do it. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. I do apologise that it was one day late, but it was Easter Sunday, man. I'm sure you can forgive me. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget, if you have a question for next week's episode, please leave them in the comment section of this video. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.